Hi, I'm Phil Constantine, and this is Travels with Phil. Today we're going to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center and the Marshall Space Flight Center. This is in Huntsville, Alabama, the central spot there you saw on the map. And as you're driving up, you'll see all kinds of things from the road. The Admiral Allen B. Shepard Jr. Highway, one of the first Americans in space, actually the first American in space. And you can see one of the Saturns outside the Davidson Center. These are the buses, and it is an interesting place. Lots and lots and lots of artifacts, memorabilia, all kinds of things that have been into space, things that were used, testing things, samples. This is your generic astronaut statue. Now, they have an entire section of, well, what have we got from the space program? These are all kinds of things that were developed for the space program that are used for all kinds of different things now, which have nothing to do necessarily with space. The foil blankets that you see people using for camping. Earlier there was a grabbing tool for surgery, hard drives, special fuels, student eye screening forms. The Discovery Channel, the guy that started that, came from part of the people that worked here. Special way to do looms, just all kinds of things that for various reasons were developed for the space program, and they've been used for a wide variety of slingshots. There were special elastic polymers. Flying saucers. Well, I don't know that. That's a little thing you pump it up and it shoots up in the air. Well, all kinds of things, all the way back to the 60s. Mountain climbing equipment here, all kinds of special metals and things like that. Gyroscopic things. They just have tons and tons and tons of stuff here in the museum. Now, this is the same spot where they do space camp, so if you come here, you'll also see kids engaged in all kinds of activities in various parts of the building. Verner Von Braun as an astronaut, and he was very involved with the very beginning part of the rocketry program for the United States. Now, this is a mock-up of his office, and a lot of the material inside are the actual things, not him, of course. The rocket that was on his desk, a lot of his awards and special mementos. Then you come back in and you can go through all kinds of stuff inside the museum itself. Doesn't have to be directly related to space camp, just all kinds of space stuff in there, rocketry. This is an entire section dedicated to what would the entire life of the cosmos be if you put it into a 12-month calendar. The original design, some of the original prospects or proposals for the space program. And there's all kinds of testing stuff, so kids can find it interesting too. Some of the earlier spacesuits are testing for the spacesuit. That was Jack Lausma's uniform, by the way. And thermal tiles, just all kinds of stuff that go into it. Helicopters, there's some stuff here on airplanes, remotes, proposed or fun things. That's the actual capsule that the monkeys who went up into space for American astronauts went up in. That's the Moo, or the Man Maneuvering Unit. They used that in the earlier days. Parts of the gloves here, filters to take out the odor in space. Believe me, if you're up there for a long time, it can get stinky. All right, these are the rocket parks outside, and they have samples of all kinds of rockets out there, everything from taking people up into space that are all the way down to the things that are used by the modern military. This is a special pressurized suit. This is from the International Space Station, the monitoring system for that, and some of the special goodies that are taken into space, like dehydrated food, all kinds of stuff to eat there. Directions on board the space stations, how do you get around, I like that, 17,500 miles per hour, that's what it takes to stay in orbit. This is the mock-up for the space stations, the big one, the U-2 outside, an actual A-12 Blackbird. And I'm sorry, that wasn't the U-2, that was the Blackbird. Sorry about that. And the rocket will free man from his remaining chains, Verner Von Braun. One of the earlier rockets capsules here. Some of them are tests, some are actual ones that have gone up and come back. And that's an umbilical cable that, like Ed White went on the first American spacewalk. You see inside some of the controls here, more pictures of rockets. And they have an entire section here developed to space flight where you can see some of the actual engines that were used, or at least the same exact engine. It may not be the one that actually was used because most of those things wound up in the ocean. But this gives you an idea of the size of some of the motors, especially in like the Saturns, the very, very big ones. Skylab, I worked on this one. That tickled me in no amount. Seeing all this stuff here from Skylab, I worked on the entire mission. I worked in the computer room downstairs from Mission Control during Skylab in the last 2 space flights. Skylab came down outside of Australia, outside of Perth, Australia, actually, to be precise. This is the Apollo 12 quarantine facility. This is where the astronauts actually sat and lived for a while after they got back from the moon, just to make sure they weren't carrying any germs of any kind. This gives you an idea of some of the solar panels. All right, now we're coming over to the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center. That's a separate tour, but you can leave from the same place. And this is where they actually do a lot of the testing, the original testing that's been going on for quite some time. And they also run the International Space Station control systems for the United States here. And we'll show that in just a minute. Some of the old observatories there. There we go. The International Space Station Payload Operations Center. This gives you a mock-up of what it's like, so in case the controllers need to go inside and get some idea where something is, so they can give some instructions, they can go do that. Some of the internal operations, these are some of the patches that were involved in the various flights, and that's the one I saw take off, STS-100. This is a tire from one of the space shuttles. That was big. That was really big. This is the tether they used to pull at the tow rope. All right, these are the actual controllers that are working on the American side of the U.S. or the International Space Station. These are the folks that are actually talking to the astronauts up there at the present time and monitoring things that are going on. So this is sort of mission control for the ISS. There's also the mission control there in Houston, but this is the one where they operate things from here in Huntsville, Alabama. Different departments do different things around the country. And it was interesting to watch these folks doing all their operations. The flags there from all the participating countries up on the ceiling, or light panels, I guess you could say, of their flags. And we stayed there for a little while. Now, this was actually a conducted tour. This isn't something you can just wander around on your own. And they do communicate other than using the headsets. They turn around and talk to each other. Now, unlike the one in Houston, this is not up on risers, so you can't see above each other. It's all one flat level floor. Alrighty, and a few more shots of this. And then this is some of the stuff they take up into space with them. Now, this is the actual spot where they did the Redstone rocket test. This is the bus we were on, the gentleman telling us about things. And they would hide in that bunker there while they tested the Redstone rockets here. And this is the original ones for the Mercury, the original astronaut programs in the United States, the original 7 astronauts. This is where they tested the rockets themselves. Without them flying into space, they would test the engines to make sure they would work. You do a lot of testing out here. And then they have an enormous one off in the distance that was much further away, but when they got to start getting to the big F1 Saturn rockets, hey, there I am. And it's a part of history. And if you're a space nut like me, it was very interesting. All right, there you go. That's where they went into where they tested it and mothballed. It looks almost like an Indian mound, doesn't it? Well, that's what they used to keep the people safe when they were testing these rockets, because sometimes they blew up, unfortunately. And so once we finished here, and it was very damp out there. We had some rain in the vicinity. We got some sprinkles every once in a while. And so once we're on the bus, and sometimes when we're out here, we had to make a quick run for it to get out of the rain. Now, that's the big testing facility. That's almost a mile away. And vertical assemblies, and so there you go, some of the rain on the windows. All right, a little bit more of a different rocket park. These are some of the various rockets that were used. That one right there, that's a V2 from Germany. That's a Jupiter C. And so you get a chance to actually see how tall these things were and realize that, when the original flights were going off, these were small. These were tiny little, relatively speaking, small as to what you might think they might be. These are some of the actual freestanding engines that were used in the varying rockets, multiple ones and certain ones. Other ones only had one rocket motor itself. And some of these are very, very large. This is the F1. This is the one that goes in the Saturns, the ones that went to the moon. And the Nerva XE engine. Now, this is one of the rockets. They laid it on site so you get a better idea of how big it might be. And so then we were back on the bus and eventually back over to the U.S. Center. These are the Robbins medallions that belong to Owen Garriott. I have a couple of these from shuttle missions, a couple from Apollo missions. And then we're back in the museum. Size matters not. Size matters not. the IMAX theater there. And this is the outside, the main part of the U.S. Space Center. And you can see some of these enormous rockets out here. Now, this was the Redstone that took the original Mercury astronaut, took a couple of the original Mercury astronauts. This is the mock-up of a lunar landing site. Obviously, you don't get much rain on the moon, but you can see the footprints out there. And this is, okay, I do panoramas, and this was, that one was totally bogus, but it looked nice when it compiled a couple of them. That's just, the computer did that on its own, so it just looked sort of cool. So I thought I'd include that out there. And so you can see how big, Nike Ajax missiles, the Nike Hercules. These are from like the late 1950s, early 1960s. I remember some of those as kids, and that's what the U.S. Defended itself with here in the homelands in case rocket attacks or whatever were coming from other countries. So it is a very, very large space. It's in Huntsville, Alabama, which is the northern part of the state. They do charge to get in, a little pricey on a couple of things, but you can find some deals there. Thank you very much for watching. If you have not subscribed, you can click on the button on the right. You can leave comments down below as long as the language is family friendly. Thank you very much for watching. Come back soon.